On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
When people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them that I accidentally started a business, and they look at me and laugh, and then when they realize I'm not laughing, like I'm dead serious. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. The reality is, until a perfect stranger pulls out their wallet
Yep.
and
And
pays
votes
you
with their
money,
dollars. That's right.
exactly, you just don't know. There's no way to know, and so it's all risk up to that point. You just have to jump.
Yeah.
I don't know everything about business, and I know a lot more than I did. It probably cost me about as much as tuition would have. And so you may lose, but the education that you get is worth everything. So just jump. I would say, just go for it. Don't worry about the risk or anything. Start it earlier, go for it. And if you lose, you still get the education from it.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. Today, I've got Joseph Watson here on the King stage. My brother, Joseph. How we doing today?
Doing good. Doing good. How are you, Chaz?
I'm doing wonderful, man. You know, it's interesting. We were just off air talking about swords, and I was given a sword a couple of weeks ago for my birthday, and my little 3-year-old son has quickly adopted it. And you got some swords in your background here. So for those that can't see the video, you got some awesome ninja swords. You said maybe one day, if we got to know each other well enough, you would tell me the story. So my goal through this conversation is to become your buddy so you can tell me about the swords, okay?
Fair enough.
Joseph, tell us what kind of business that you got, man.
So we are Canine Sport Sack. We make forward-facing backpack dog carriers. We make them specifically for sporting events, things like that. They're not the type of carriers that you necessarily carry on a duffel bag or on an airplane. They're specifically made for sports, and that's why it's called Canine Sport Sack.
I love it. I told you right before we hit the recording button, I was, reviewing my notes, and I just love how the marketplace is wide open. You can provide a product which then solves a problem and you make money. Like, that is just how it works. And for you, I just would have never thought of doing this. Like, that's just not my lane. I'm so glad that you created it because I'm just not that person. But man, yeah, you are crushing business, providing just an awesome product that someone like me would have never thought of. So I just love how you just jumped into this very specific area, but crushing it. So anxious to hear your story, man.
Okay.
Before we get started with your story, Joseph, I want to know why. Like, why the business? What's the bigger picture? Why are you still doing it? Because obviously you're operating at a pretty high level of success at the current moment. Like, what's the deeper seated motivation for you?
You say that you wouldn't have come up with the idea. We actually didn't either. When people ask me what I do for a living, I tell them that I accidentally started a business, and they look at me and laugh. And then when they realize I'm not laughing, like I'm dead serious. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. But basically, the motivation and the story are kind of one and the same. It was about 2008 when my sister-in-law was working at a junior high in Bountiful, Utah, which is just north of Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And she went to take the garbage out, and she threw the garbage in the dumpster and heard something whimpering down in the dumpster. And so she climbed in and found this little cage with this little puppy in the dumpster. And my in-laws already had a dog, so they couldn't take her. And so she brought her to our house, and we were like, okay, we're poor college students, had like $30 in our bank account. Yeah. And we said she could stay with us for the weekend. And I mean, that was 14 years ago. So we're done looking for a good home for her. She's right here. She comes to work with me every day. She's totally deaf at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her name is Dumpster Daisy, but we call her Daisy for short.
Daisy.
But we fell in love with her over the weekend. And during that time, I was training for a bike ride. It's a 206-mile bike ride that goes from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah,
it's
wow.
called the Lodajaw. And I was training every day after school. We were working like 3 jobs between the two of us, me and my wife. And, whenever we could sneak in a bike ride, we'd go for maybe a 25 or 30 mile bike ride. And I would come home every day and we had these low windows in our living room, and we'd throw on our cycling gear and ride off, and Daisy would sit there and look out the window at us, and it
Yeah.
just broke our hearts. And so we decided to see if there was a way to, of course, we did what, any pet owner does. My dogs need exercise, so she can just run alongside us. So we just,
Yeah.
took her with us on the first ride or two, and she made it maybe half a mile and just kind of like laid breathed with this look on her face. It was like, I'll die right here. Just pick me up on your way back through. And
Yeah.
so I picked her up and put her on my arm and rode back to the house, and which is like super dangerous. I'm like clipped into my pedals. I'm hitting curbs,
Right.
and like we almost
Yeah.
died probably 5 or 6 times. And so I can't remember exactly which happened first, but we went to a store and we bought just like a front carrier,
Okay.
and it was the only one they had that would work for sports. There
Yeah.
are carriers out there that work as a duffel bag and stuff, and obviously those are not gonna
Right.
work for bike rides, so we picked out
Right.
one that would, and it was a front carrier. And as my knees would go up and down, I would, like, jostle Daisy around, and she fell out of it a
Yeah.
couple times. I still had to use an arm to carry her, and so it was pretty
Right.
ineffective. But at some point around there, we just kinda threw her in a regular backpack. We took, like, a school backpack and kinda zip tied the zippers together,
Yeah.
and she just kinda sunk into a puddle in the bottom of the bag. And so it never, I mean, we tried slings, we tried rear facing carriers. The sling kinda hurt my shoulder. When she was facing backwards, she got really motion sick. Um,
Really?
when she was, we put her in an enclosed carrier, and she just kinda threw herself from side to side because she didn't know, like,
Yeah.
who was carrying her. She wanted,
Yeah.
dogs to hang their head out the window.
Yeah.
So, I did the lotus. I came home, and they had given me this little, like, swag bag, the ones with the drawstring that you carry your
Oh,
shoes
sure.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So I came home, and we were about to give up. We'd basically given up on the whole, taking her on bike rides, just kinda
Yeah.
leave her at home. And I threw the thing on the floor, turned around, and turned back around, and she was laying on top of that little bag with her tail just gyrating like crazy. And it's pretty obvious that she wanted to go for a bike ride. So I guess I lost my mind, and I kinda stuffed her into this little bag, and I've got these pictures of me, like, that very first ride, and
Yeah.
she's sticking, her armpits are sticking out under this bag, and she's on my back. And
Yeah.
it it worked better than anything that was on the market at the point. It was like this little janky swag bag was
Yeah.
the best pet carrier on the market. And so I got home from about a 20-mile bike ride, and I had these purple bruises on my
Yeah.
shoulders.
Yeah.
And my wife, Jen, she took apart that old school backpack and put the padded shoulder straps on. And from there, it was just like I would take a bike ride, and we realized that it needed better balance. So we built this collar enclosure on the top of it, and these
Yep.
armholes for their arms to go out because she would rotate around. And it just
Uh-huh.
kind of evolved around her.
Yeah.
And we eventually sat down with kind of a little pattern of some sort and drew this thing up and created this
Yeah.
carrier. And to your original point, like, you wouldn't have had the idea for a business. We didn't either. Like, we had
Yeah.
no clue that we were going to start a business with this. And it was after, like, probably a couple dozen people, like, pulled me over to the side of the road as I'm riding, interrupted my ride, and said,
Yeah.
"Dude, where did you get that? Where can we get one?" And we're kinda slow on the uptake. It was that many people before we started thinking, "Man, there's a market here. There's a
Yeah.
hole here." And so the idea of, like, making money off of this product, that came way later on. We were just thinking, "Man, we could solve a really big problem here."
Yeah.
So we sent that prototype off to a prototypist in Spokane, Washington, and they sent it back. And I went to my father-in-law. We didn't have any money to do this, so I went to him and I said, "There's a show in Las Vegas we wanna do. We want to, we need to manufacture these bags." And so I think we borrowed, like, $2,500 from him. And as he's writing the check, he said, "I gotta go on record, man. I'm willing to lend you this money, but I gotta go on record. I do not believe that there are enough people in this world that are gonna wanna carry a dog on their backs. I've got to be, the authority figure here and say that, but if there's
Yeah.
any
You're
in the
nuts.
world." Yeah, "You're nuts. I want to go on record that, you're nuts, but if anybody can figure it out, it's Jen," which is my wife's name, his daughter. And
Yeah.
so, great, that's how my father-in-law feels about me. So we took the check, we did the show in Las Vegas, and I mean, you show up and you're nervous. Like, we had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is your friends and family can say, "This is a great product." They can pump you up, and,
Right.
crack your football helmet and slap your pads and be like, "Yeah, let's go, game on." But the reality is until a perfect stranger pulls out their wallet
Yep.
and
And
pays
votes
you
with their
money.
dollars. That's right.
Exactly. You just don't know. There's no way to know. And so it's all risk up to that point. You just have to jump. And so we went down to this show, and it was kind of a homegrown little show, probably 5 or 6,000 people, and we this lady came over. I was riding around on a mountain bike in front of our booth, and we had, like, homemade signs. I mean, we had done
Yeah.
it all cheap. Like, all these people got these glossy booths and everything. We've got, like, poster board and, Canine Sport Sack written in, like, chalk, and it was really, really, unprofessional, but this lady came over and she looked at my back and she said, "What is that on your back?" And I said, "Well, this is called the Canine Sport Sack." And she said, "Is this your booth right here?" And we watched her. It was like Moses. She bought a bag, she turned around, and she walked over into the crowd of people, and we watched their heads turn as this lady walked through this crowd of people, and
Yeah.
then their heads turned and looked over at us, and then the crowd just kinda
Moved.
moved over to our booth. And so the show went from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and by 11 or 12 o'clock, like, by, like, noon, we had sold out of every
Oh,
bag
yeah.
we had. We were taking back orders, and we were frantically calling that manufacturer in Spokane going, "We need more bags," and, we from there, it was just kind of a snowball. We had 0 business experience. So I was actually going to school at UNLV getting a master's degree, and the plan was to become a history professor.
Wow.
So I was about halfway finished with my PhD a year and a half later when it became one or the other. It was either PhD or do Canine Sports Act because it had gotten so
Right.
big that
Yeah.
I was need to dedicate my entire time to it.
Yeah.
And so it was just the next years were just us pinballing from one mistake to the next. And
Yeah.
it really is it speaks a lot to the power of our product that my own ineptitude didn't just crush the business outright,
That's right.
because I mean, I've had to learn it on the fly. I mean, there's no template to work from. You just have to kinda, make the mistakes and
Thank goodness Jen saved you.
yeah, she sure did, and she continues to save me too. She really is
Awesome.
the heart of the business. She's like we run it together. She's
Of
my
course.
silent partner, I guess, but she's really the one in charge of it all. So
Oh, yeah.
shout out to
Oh,
her.
yeah. I get that. Well, I had to fulfill the prophecy for your father-in-law to let him know, that Jen clearly has saved the day here, and thank goodness Joseph didn't run us into the hole here.
Yep.
Which is funny, it's funny now. I probably didn't feel so good then, but I can remember a time when my wife's grandmother, who was a professor at a university, and she just adored me. Like, walking on the arm to church adored me. Like, we were boyfriend, girlfriend at the time. Like, I was the one though. Like, she wanted to walk on Chaz's arm. Until she found out that not only I had dropped out of college, but I had no intention of going back. She plainly, bluntly, clearly let me know that I would never be successful without a college education, and had wanted nothing to do with me after that. And so I know those moments where that very distinct, huh, okay, watch,
Yep.
I understand that feeling at all. So not to say that there's disdain or anything on your end, but there's I'm sure there was a little weight that you carried with that for a while, as I'm sure all the listeners have had that moment for themselves where someone says, I don't think you can do it. Thank goodness Jen was there.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to describe to people what's going on in your head. You
Yeah.
just have to show them, and that takes a lot of risk, but my father-in-law, he's actually come down and worked for us a couple of times, so that's that's
Oh,
satisfying.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, still today will say something like, I really wish it was her mother would be around to see all of your success, because obviously I was much younger and I hadn't started any businesses or whatnot. But she remembers that moment. So okay, Joseph, I want to get into some practical stuff here. You gave us just, I mean, I could probably sit here with my popcorn and just keep you, engaged here with telling the rest of the story. That was really good. But practically inside, other than starting, because that sounds like that was a great decision. What was a good decision that you guys made that, like, you can look back on and go, when we did that, things really, really started to work for us? What was that?
I tell you what, this actually started out as what we thought was a mistake. We thought we'd messed up bad, but it ended up being one of the greatest things that could happen to us.
Okay.
So I was 16 years old, all my friends got cars and stuff, and my mom she's a seamstress. She likes to sew. And so she got me this 1963 Bernina sewing machine that, I mean, it like weighed as much as a car, but
Sure.
I told my friends I didn't get anything for my birthday because I'm not going to tell them I got a sewing machine.
Right.
But I put that thing in storage, and then when we went overseas, we started manufacturing in bulk. The manufacturer in Spokane couldn't handle the volume anymore,
Sure.
so we started manufacturing overseas. And the design of our bag, see, a lot of backpacks, they have the straps, the shoulder straps that come out of the top of the bag, a seam that comes
Okay.
out of the top. Well,
Yeah.
our bag has these, 6-inch armholes that go above the shoulder straps, and so the shoulder straps basically come out of the middle of the bag. And
Okay.
it was a pattern that was really hard for them to figure out, and so we got our first, it was like 2,000 bags from it was Asia,
Yeah.
and the bags came in, and we had a couple 100 back orders, and we sent those out, and we immediately got reports that
Feedback.
they were breaking. The shoulder straps were just coming out of that seam because they didn't know that you had to double stitch it, and there's a, you know, we just hadn't figured it out yet. We used
Oh,
material that we could afford. We, used thread we could afford, things like that. And so we thought we were done. There's this cold feeling that goes over you, and it's like, wow, we've done this for a
just
year
a couple
now.
hundred. Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, at a couple 100 bags at that point was a lot of bags, and then we had, like,
Yeah.
1,800 left in stock, and so I sat down just kinda on a whim. I just sat down with that sewing machine that my mom gave me, pulled the thing out of mothballs, and I sewed an extra little stitch across the underside of the shoulder straps, and each bag took me 10 minutes. And so you do the math, that's like 1,800 bags times 10 minutes. That's a lot of time. I'd come home from, and I had another job at the time. So I hadn't quit my full-time job yet, and I was still going to school. And so I would come home, do my homework, put the kids in bed, and then work until like 3 o'clock in the morning. But over time, I started to realize, I'm sitting there looking at this bag, and you're looking at it for hours and hours on end. And you start to
Yeah.
think, if we had some vents on the side of it, this would be a lot cooler. If this thing had a little bit of stretchy material here, it would, if we had some straps that went across the zipper, and you start to build fail safes into your design. So as I'm sitting there
Right.
fixing this bag, the design begins to evolve in my mind.
Yeah.
And now we have a bag that we have a breakage rate that, I mean, you're not putting a laptop or papers or anything in it. You're putting a living, breathing animal, one that you ostensibly love to
That you
death,
care
and
about. Yeah.
it cannot break. It
Yeah.
has to be right.
Yeah.
And so we have a breakage rate that's absurdly low, in part because we take so much time to make sure that our quality control is in place, but also we've
Right.
got all these, like, defense mechanisms in place, all these, like, safety nets built into it, so that if this breaks, there's a fail-safe that just a redundancy, I guess, that just kind of
Yeah.
picks up the slack there.
Yeah.
And so all of that came from a disaster, what we thought was a disaster. Really, we are where we are now. We have 6 or 7 different products. We carry dogs. With the biggest dog we've ever put in a canine sport sector was 125 pounds. Now,
Whoa.
we have our biggest bag rated up to 80 pounds. So anybody listening, don't go put a 125-pound dog.
Don't put your Saint Bernard in there.
Yeah, legally, we're only allowed to say 80 pounds, but an 80-pound dog, that's a big dog,
That's
and
a
our
big
bags
dog.
will hold it. And so that probably the best, not necessarily decision, but best set of circumstances that could have possibly happened to us at that moment.
Yeah, I loved how you broke down the mind work because really, I mean, the MS of the show, good decision, bad decision, and we'll get to your bad decision here in a second, but it's really about creating environments, even if we don't realize it in the moment, of how do I think? How do I process this information so that I can make better and better and better decisions? And so I loved how you broke that down, like where you were fixing a problem, but it wasn't just like, let me hurry up quick and stitch this. I got schoolwork, I got kids. Like you could have given yourself a million excuses, just hurry up, quick, stitch, get it done. And that probably would have solved the problem. But you were more than that. You were trying to solve a greater problem, problems that you didn't even have yet. Probably because of the feeling in your mind, of which I've felt this way before several times with a certain circumstances that you're trying to figure out. It's like, okay, well, if this happened and it made me feel like this, 200 bags, and I getting all this feedback. I don't want this ever to happen again. So I'm going to go like all in on this thing. And because I can't just like band-aid it, because then you're going to get another one and another one. So I just love the way that you like forced your mind to figure it out. And that's just such a valuable tool as a accidental entrepreneur or even somebody who did it on purpose. I think like our mind is powerful if we push it to like figure stuff out and solve problems. What would you say to what I'm saying here? What's your response
Yeah,
to that?
absolutely. It really it has led to all of the improvements that we've had over the years. All of the, you know, I promised myself, like you said, in that moment, I would never feel like that again. I would never be in a position where I was looking at my product and wondering if it was even worthy, if I could, in good faith present that to a customer
Right.
and feel good about it. And I promised myself I would never send out another bag that was not perfect from that point on. And that moment led to all the improvements, all the I mean, we've got bags that we've got a bag that's coming out soon that does a million different things because the very first bag was not perfect. So yeah, it has led to a lot of our product development improvements for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the examples that you gave there and the mindset, I think is just really, really valuable. So I hope the listeners paying attention. Sometimes it's those feelings. I remember I was only 25 and I had just one, actually two edible arrangements locations. It was Valentine's Day. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I had zero clue. And Valentine's Day came and went, and I had no teeth remaining. I mean, I did obviously, but it felt like I got them all kicked out, right? And I'm just, I'd been awake for 3 days straight, felt like I was buried. And I said, this will never happen again, which pushes you into systems and process and hiring well and thinking way in advance and going, okay, well, this happened. And if that happens, then that happens. And like thinking like through these thought trees of the if then scenarios. And so I just want the listener to take this away because you gave us just some incredible juice that I think all entrepreneurs, and this is a conversation that doesn't come up very often, but when you start thinking like this, it's not like really even planning. It is planning, but it's like, you start like anticipating is what it is really. And you can make really good moves when you're anticipating and anticipating well.
For sure. For sure.
Joseph, tell us about what the bad decision was. What was something that happened that just did not work out at all?
Oh man, it kind of dovetails with the last question. My own hubris. I started thinking that I knew everything about my product. I got to the point where it was what I wanted to put into my
Mm,
product, and I stopped asking my customers what they wanted. So we created a bag. It was actually really cool. We still own the technology, and we haven't really put it to bed yet, but it has these zippers that go around the bottom. You know how like luggage, you have two
yeah.
zippers, one that opens the luggage, and the other one that pops it out about 3 inches. So
Yeah.
we've got a canine sports sack that has two zippers that go around the bottom that pop it down.
Yeah.
We thought it was a brilliant concept. We thought, wow, we've got a one size fits all. Because one of the biggest issues that our customers have is getting the right size for their dog. Dogs
For
are
sure.
just, a million different sizes. And so we've got different ways, like a booster block that goes in the bottom that kind of mitigates the, split sizes sort of a thing.
Yeah.
But we thought we had solved the problem. I went down to a physics professor at UNLV and I said, we don't want to make a white bag that would obviously get really, really dirty, but what's the next coolest color? And he went through the color spectrum and said, green, right in the middle of the Roy G. Biv spectrum, green is the coolest color that isn't white. And so we made a bunch of like bright green bags. I chose the fabric. I chose the design. I put way too much into it. I took too many of my own ideas and I wrapped it up in this one bag. And when it finally came out, it was so overly complicated that nobody could figure out how to use it. And B, I hadn't asked one customer what they wanted. And the first question was, dude, we don't want green. We want something that matches our shoes. We want
Right.
something that, and so we ended up, if we had done even a marginal amount of testing, then we would have found out that, it was overly complicated. It wasn't going to work. And the design, the quality of what the materials that we had chosen, they were inferior.
Yeah.
And so we sent out, we had, at that point, we were a lot bigger and we had a couple thousand back orders. And as soon as they showed up, we sent them out and we did a recall. And the recall it cost us dearly. And so from that point on, I realized, I'm not making these bags for me. I'm making them for a customer. And I've kind of instilled that in my employees. Like everything you're doing for a customer. And for us, a customer is a hybrid of a human and a dog. So you have to consider the human and the dog when building a product or building a marketing campaign or when
Right.
responding to a customer service question or even packaging something up.
Yeah.
And so those are that switch in mindset from let's do it the way we want to do it to what is best for the customer's experience has been absolutely massive. It has connected us to a customer in a way that
Yeah.
previously we just weren't. And now we don't build anything unless a customer has given us the input to begin with. We've tested it with, we've got some what we call platinum customers, people that have been,
Sure.
become friends and influencers over the years, and we send them, 10 of our products, test them out, get their feedback, kind of roll their feedback into the final version, the gold sample, as it were.
Right.
And we really haven't had any flops since, because that was one of those moments again where I will never be in this position again. That was one of those, your body goes cold and
Mhm.
you lay there for 3 days and you don't eat and you say, "Wow, I blew it." And so
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
we, our customers are our feedback.
Yeah. I mean, you've given so much just lifeblood, honestly, in the last couple minutes. I hope the listener goes back and listens again. My follow-up question to you is this. Because at some point that had to change. And I know you just kind of gave like maybe a tipping point, but when you started the business, it was because you created a product for you, right? And so at some point you realized it's not for me anymore. And so you just gave us the moment when that happened. Tell me the mindset behind that, because you started the business or accidentally building a product for you. But what you just said is that I'm not building a product for me. How does the listener take your story and go, well, he started like this, but it had to transition to this? Like, as an entrepreneur, take that and then put that into their business.
You know, the way it happened for us, and I'll go back to, it's always scary no matter how much feedback you have to release a product. But when we were riding around with Daisy on our backs for the first, I mean, it was like a year. I had a guy, it was a guy, he was in a black SUV, an Escalade or a Tahoe or something. He pulled over so violently that I thought, I mean, he ran me into the weeds, and he jumped out and he was very excited and he said, where'd you get that bag? Where can I get one?" And he was really disappointed, like absolutely crushed when he found out that we'd made it in our kitchen.
Yeah.
And he offered me $300 right then and there for that bag. And so that was the moment where I thought, okay, there's a market for this. This isn't just for me.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm kind of slow on the uptake. That was when we discovered that there was a market for it. And really almost every product that we build, we do what we call market verification. You got to make sure there are going to be customers for it. If it doesn't solve a problem, then it really doesn't serve much purpose at all. It doesn't do anything. And so the best way to determine if it's going to solve a problem is to ask a bunch of people if they have that common problem. Is this a problem that you have? Fortunately, we had enough people that like aggressively told us that they had that problem, but it wasn't until a lot later that it clicked that, you know, I built a product, yes, for me and my dog, but I'm
Yep.
not alone in this.
Right.
But it wasn't until years later when I looked up and went, you know what? Customers know what they want. They know what they want. They know what they need. They know, and I am one data point. Yes, I
Yep.
am a pet. I'm a pet owner, but I don't have a big dog. I don't have a dog that's anxious. I don't have a dog that, dogs come in a million different shapes and sizes and personalities and all that stuff. And so really
Yep.
the only way to find that out is to go out in the world and ask customers to describe their dogs to you. And dog people, they
That's right.
will. They will talk
They
about their
will.
dogs all day, every day.
They love them.
They love their dogs, and so we have an entire department that's dedicated now to, we call it user experience, and it's just people that just go out and do surveys. They go through Amazon reviews and just glean the good and the bad. We have our customer service people who just sit there and take notes. We have piles and piles of information that comes from the customers, and that was, yeah, it was a moment in time where we realized, yes, this is for us, but this is actually for them, so we better build it for them.
Yeah. Good transition there. I think you gave just a super honest, feedback there, because you're right. It is for you. And oftentimes we start the business for us, even if we're not serving us like you are. We start the business because we want to put food on the table for the kids or whatever.
For sure.
But at some point, it has to become more than that. And we talk about this in Gathering the Kings mastermind group, because it's the transition from warrior to king. Warrior is selfish ambition, which is okay. You have to do that for a period of time. And then king is like, I just have so many more people to think about as I'm making decisions, which is the weight of the crown, as we say. But for you, your clients are a part of that, and every business should be. But with your product, it's just really, really awesome that you could kind of figure that out along the way because you've got thousands of data points and are more than willing to give you some feedback. Because dog owners, man, my wife, I'm surprised she doesn't know about this bag. We've done some different things over the years with she'd put some, in the front of the bike and, little basket type things. And so I already know after she listens to this show that there's going to be at least 3 bags ordered. And so I'll be a new data point for you, or maybe she will.
Well, hey, we value your feedback. We really do. We view our customers as a department. They're
A
our
great
R&D.
mindset.
They're an R&D department, and without them, every single time we've done it on our own, we've failed, and every single time we've taken them into consideration and done exactly what they want, we've had a huge hit every single time.
I love it. That's just such good, clear mindset. That's just so good. I'm going to transition to our speed round here, Joseph. I want, from a practical standpoint, inside your business, I talk about KPIs. Is my first question. I say it like this, though. If you could only pick one thing to track inside of your canine business, what would it be?
Oh man, one thing to track that ties everything together.
In essence,
A couple of years ago, I sat down and I asked the question, how is Canine Sports Act doing? And that's really a question that can't be answered. Like, how are you doing it in what sense? Financially, how are you doing in all these different senses? And I realized I built these really intricate spreadsheets where I would say, we're making this much money, but we're spending this much to get here. And I focused a lot on the money. And so at first blush, it's like, oh, sales. Sales. And then from sales come from, Amazon, our website, and from wholesale. We have like 3,500 stores around the world that carry the Canine Sports Sack. And so you kind of compare those against each other. But the reality is the wholesale department is run by a wholesale manager who is managing a team of people. The marketing department, you want to look at it like, oh, how much money did marketing bring us? But the reality is the marketing department is run by people. And so the KPI that I would choose is if you can quantify it, and you can through, employee turnover and stuff like that, but employee morale, what kind of how do you quantify your culture? If my people are well taken care of, they're happy, they are motivated, they're challenged, they've got, all the you check all the boxes, you don't have to worry about sales. Sales will come because a good employee or a happy employee radiates something to the customer. The customer feels satisfied, they feel comforted, they feel at ease,
Yeah.
they purchase your product, and that's where sales come from. So sales in and of themselves, they don't stand alone. They ride on
Right.
the backs of our employees. And so we've got this pay structure where we pay our employees probably Jen is my CFO. She takes care of all the money. She's always complaining about how much we're spending on our employees. But the reality is we pay them probably higher than market value, but we've also got this bonus system written into it where we pay them, we want to give them something to chase. And
Yeah.
so we have nobody ever quits from Canine Sports Tech. We have people that graduate from college and then we just put them in the position that they need to be in to succeed. So whatever they enjoy, and if they have a work day that they enjoy, then everything else falls into place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pause, rewind, replay. Just gave some really, really great information that just rolls out of you so naturally. How did you get to that place? Like for the listener right now, it's like, oh, that's so good. But like, I don't have a clue how to start doing that. Like, how did you develop these just principles inside of you to take good care of people?
Some of it probably predates Canine Sports Sack. I worked for a small company before I came to Canine Sports Sack, and the boss there was very kind. He was very generous, but he had never been an employee. He had always owned his own business and he'd forgotten what it was like to work for somebody else. So there was this disconnect between us and him. And so I remember, and this is his right. I got paid the same amount every year, and his houses got bigger, and his cars got faster, and we made him a lot of money. And so I remember thinking, as an employee, if I ever get the opportunity to do this, I will do it different. So I came into it with a certain mindset that comes from 30 30 years of being employed by somebody else, I guess.
Right.
But to get to that point at Canine Sports Sack was a lot of trial and error. I got it wrong a lot of times early on. I would micromanage this person, and then they would quit because it's hard. It's really difficult to build a project, a
Yep.
product, to build a department by yourself, because at first it's just you. And then it's like, mitosis. It just kind of, you kind of divide and divide. You hire two people to do the job that you were just doing. And now we've got 25 employees, but it never was easy to say, okay, I built this to this point. You take it from here, because they're not going to do it like you did. That they're not going
Right.
to. They don't view it the same way, and so that was really tough for me. So I'd micromanage employee one. They would quit because their boss was a micromanager, and then the next one I'd say, okay, I'm going to give you total creative latitude to do whatever you want, and that person would quit because
Because they needed
I
some structure.
was I appeared apathetic about what they were doing. I didn't really seem to care. So
Right.
then, over time, I kind of figured out a structure, moderation. There's this balance
Yeah.
between, being overly involved, and so that just came through years and years of understanding that employees need a certain type of working environment to succeed. They need a
Right.
challenge. They need something to grow toward. And so we built this kind of matrix of cultural proclivities that have served us well. They don't fit everybody. Every once in a while, we have somebody come in that just doesn't fit super well, but we hardly ever have anybody that just outright quits and leaves Canine
Yeah.
Sports Act.
So good, man. So good. And I love the stories behind it. What book or resource would you recommend for a business owner trying to grow this year?
I liked the Lean Startup. The Lean Startup was a really good one for me because I'm really bad to tinker with a thing ad infinitum. I'll take something and I'll mess with it forever. And that was the book that finally said, look, at some point you got to lay the thing down. At some point you
Yep.
got to take it to market. At some point you have to do, and so the concept of a minimum viable product was really important for me,
Yep.
because I would keep perfecting something, and perfection it's an exercise in futility. So you have to go with good enough. And so the lean startup was the one that really helped me out a lot to get past that.
Yeah, it's a good example. You got to be free enough, not necessarily to not care, but free enough to say, all right, let's just start and know that you're going to get some feedback along the way and we'll adjust.
Yeah, at some
And
point you
we,
just got to jump.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cause otherwise nothing ever happens or no one ever gets, the bag. No one ever gets to ride with their dog, the actual thing that you were trying to provide doesn't actually happen.
Yep.
What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
I love it. I absolutely love it. So we do these shows every year. There are big ones, Super Zoo and Global. The pet industry in and of itself is as my dad says, it's a good old boy network. It's kind of a closed group. These people, they know each other for years. And so you go to these shows and you'll have, I mean, there are thousands of booths there, and half the people that are there this year won't be there next year. And that's just sad to me. These people are trying to live their dream. They are in the scary phase where they're unsure about what's going to happen. And so we have several companies that we've helped to grow, and they've helped us in turn. It's not just us,
Sure.
being altruistic. They're like, I mean, I'll give you an example. So there's this company called Rec Specs. So Rec Specs
Okay.
makes these like really high end goggles for dogs. They look like snowboarding goggles.
Wow.
We sell almost as many rec specs as rec specs themselves, because when you look at their website, you think, at what point is my dog going to be running across a park fast
Oof.
enough to necessitate eye protection? But you juxtapose it. You put it side by side with the canine sports sack, and it clicks. Oh, well, I could be riding a bike or a snowmobile or skis or whatever, and now I am going to need eye protection for my dog.
That's
And
right.
so people buy a lot of rec specs from us. And so rec specs, we've helped them grow. They've helped us grow because people, they do want rec specs. They just don't see the value in it until you juxtapose it with the value of the canine sports sack. And we've got
Yeah.
a whole bunch of products that we sell in our own website, our own store, things like that interface with our product perfectly. And we do a lot of cross promotion. We do a lot of, if we had a lot of people at the very beginning, store owners and people who'd been in the industry forever, and they went out of their way to help us out. And if we
Yeah.
can help anybody else do that, then it's a kick. I absolutely love that. So I am
Yeah.
all about cross promoting,
Yep.
becoming involved with the industry. It can do nothing but good if you have more friends than less.
Yeah. I mean, you gave like 8 different principles, but the one I want to hone in on was the strategic partnership for you and Rexpex is like, what a perfect combination. And that I mean, I assumed when you said Rexpex, I'm like, okay, I'm assuming this is goggles for dogs. And it was. I hadn't even put it together that it would make sense for you to sell them. But as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes perfect sense. And so when you can not only hone in on your product, but then you look at adding value to others, which that's really, I mean, like you said, we sell probably as much as they do outside of us, which is a huge value to that company. But for your client, you are providing through selling them something more, which makes you more money. You're adding value to your client even because you're making an all-in-one solution. There's just so many, synergies that can happen when you're like, you could have just tried to, build rec specs on your own. Like, we're going to do goggles, but rather you decided to partner or have a strategic alliance. There's just so much value in what you just said. So, I mean, I could probably analyze it for the next hour. That's what I love to do, but we don't have time for that. I have a question for you about family. Okay. So I am on this like journey, this mission to help entrepreneurs figure out how to be obsessed in their business and in their families, because the word balance, in my opinion, for entrepreneurs, just throw it out the window. Like, it just doesn't exist. So inside of that construct, how have you been obsessed with the business, even working with your wife in the business? Thank goodness Jen's been there, right?
No, for
And then,
sure.
and then over here, your family and kiddos and all that stuff. Like, how does that come together in your world? And what can you share with other entrepreneurs who maybe struggle in this area?
It's taken me a long time to find a balance, and I'm not even 100% sure that I have found it. For years, I was working an 80-hour work week. I used to laugh when people would complain about a 40-hour work week, and I would say, "Hi, I remember my
Right.
first part-time job." I got to the point within the last couple of years where my kids were growing up. I have an 8-year or 9-year-old who plays soccer, and I mean, she's the best one in her league, and I wanna see her play. I've got a girl who ice skates, I've got a boy who plays baseball, and so owning your own business gives you the ability to go do those things
Yeah.
whenever you need to, but you do have to get to that point. So, you know, at the very beginning, we were doing everything ourselves, all the shipping. We were doing all the customer service and everything. And it was an 80-hour work week. I am grateful to Jen for taking a lot of that burden. I guess we front loaded our schedules because now we have a lot more time. But the reality is when you have the ability to hire somebody, do, because two people doing two jobs I mean, it multiplies. Then
Yeah.
eventually you're gonna have 4 people doing 4 jobs, and that's if I had continued to do it all myself, we wouldn't be where we are, right? We had to hire. So not only have they taken a bunch of the burden off of me, but they have freed me up to do more of those family time things. I don't know that I have an answer. I can just tell you what I have done, which is work like a dog for 5 or 6 years and then hire enough people to take over those jobs, and now I work from home a lot. I go and see my kids play their sports. I'm still very involved with Canine Sports Act, but,
A different level.
different level.
Yeah. I appreciate that authenticity. I don't know if any of us have it quite figured out, but I think that we're all, at least for the ones that are listening, that want to have a holistic approach. They have wholesome values on both sides. They don't want to just be a successful business owner, but they want to be a great dad and they want to be a great husband. There's always going to be that play to be better, just like there's always going to be a play to be better in the business. But some of those things are super practical. I appreciate that. I got one last question here for you. Ready?
Okay.
If you could whisper in the younger Joseph's ear, what would you say?
Oh man. I think I would have started earlier. I think no, you mean knowing what I know now? Like if I knew it was going to work out the way I'd say go for it earlier because I spent a lot of time wondering about the risk. I have no aversion to risk necessarily, but I mean, you lose a lot. If you lose big when you go into a business. So there's a lot. I would go back and say, look, there's a way to do this where you can check all the boxes that isn't going to take you. I mean, we found Daisy in 2008, and the first Canine Sports Act came out in 2015.
Right.
So, I mean, that's 7 years of demurring about, are we going to do this? Are we not? If we had started years early, we'd be way farther ahead than we are now. I would say, don't be as afraid. Don't be as scared. Just, take the risk. And, even if you lose, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I came into this with no business experience. And now I mean, the shirt that I'm wearing today is from Ensign College. I got this shirt last week when I was speaking at Ensign College up in Salt Lake City because they wanted me to come in and speak about my business experience.
Yeah.
I don't know everything about business, but
Sure.
I know a lot more than I did. And I mean, it probably cost me about as much as tuition would have. And so you may lose, but the education that you get is worth everything. So just jump. I would say just go for it. Don't worry about the risk or anything. Start it earlier, go for it. And if you lose, you still get the education from it.
Yeah. Yeah. You could probably use that education just to do it again.
I do it and do it better for sure.
Yeah, exactly. You've been incredible. Your story is, we didn't even get probably half of it, but super fun. And I'm just so thankful to have you here. How can the listeners, number one, find your product? Where can they go to order? And then number two, how can they find you as an individual? They want to, do the business chat with you. How can they find you?
For sure. Yeah. So we sell, we have a white labeled bag. Arcadia Trail makes our bag at PetSmart, and we sell petco.com, target.com, walmart.com, amazon.com. But if you really want to get the full experience, caninesportsact.com has all the, the most updated sizing guides and videos. And basically you can cram more of your own personality into your own website. So really you could probably go down to a local store and find it, but caninesportsact.com for sure. And if they want to get a hold of me, I mean, just customer service you just info@caninesportsact.com. I have access to it. I check it every day. I don't necessarily respond to all the customer service emails, but if somebody reaches out to info@caninesportsact.com, I will see it and I will respond. And so I get a kick out of answering any questions. I don't know everything, like I said, but if I do know the answer, I'll give it my best shot. And if I don't know, I'm not gonna, I won't lie to you. I'll tell you that I don't know. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about business in general, about Canine Sports Act in specific, anything like that, just reach out, info@caninesportsact.com.
Love it. Love it. Joseph, you've been incredible. I selfishly can't wait to get to know you maybe a little bit better. I already told you my wife's going to order a few of these bags, I'm sure. So we'll be talking more, I'm sure. But thank you for being here. Blessings on your family, your business, your team, everything that you got your hand to. We really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing literally over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings literally exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.